Isquis Chichawasket, Pamela Barnes. It's my honor today to formally welcome you to the Syilx territory. And so before I do that, I want to share with you a little bit about what our lands mean to us. In this part of Turtle Island, which is how we refer to North America, the sharing of our lands with peoples from other places is fairly recent. It's about 200 years. Where other parts of Turtle Island, that history goes back 500 years, 1,000 years, depending on where you're speaking of. But here it's fairly recent. And with those coming together of different peoples from different places, came some new ideas about human relationship to the land, and that are very different from our traditional viewpoint about our relationship to the lands. And so one of those concepts is the idea of ownership, human ownership of land. And we as Syilx people see ourselves more of borrowing these lands from our great-great-great-great-grandchildren. We look at things in 7 generations. And there's a very big difference between those two ideas. So if I own this necklace, I can sell it, I can trade it, I can give it away. It's mine, I can do what I want. It's up to me how I choose to care for it. I can take great care, or I can toss it aside. Again, it's mine. I can do what I want with it. If I borrow this necklace, everything changes in those relationships. I cannot sell it. I cannot trade it. I cannot give it away. And there's an expectation that I take the very best care possible. And when I leave it or return it, that at least it's in the same condition I found it in, and if at all possible, in better. So those ideas are very different. And it's with that understanding of our relationship to these lands that we first welcomed people to the traditional unceded territory of the Syilx people. And so it's with that understanding that today I welcome you to the traditional unceded and currently occupied territory of the Syilx people, with the gentle reminder that none of us, including ourselves as Syilx people, are taking the very best care possible of these lands for all of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth. Limlim.
Why limlim? Kulan chutin kan wist. Tali hastis puus kana lab apanas khalkhald. Why tskitski khayat nakhul why kuts to wilch. Ul tali hasti kali ayatstim ikel mrimsten ikel siur ikel stiltsel ikel squank. Yatstim why khulal why skepchamul kekamis stjaak miku taku otikal temhula kukaus witsum kukaus tikum te yatstim tali hastis puus kitskala utlut shanum tulnych khui utlutak shanum tali hastis puus luwikinsin apanas khalkhalt. Thank you, Creator, for allowing me to say a few words and a little prayer. Oh, I'm very, very happy that you have arrived here today. All the things that we do in a good way. At this time of year, it's springtime, and our people are going to go on the land and collect medicines and dig roots. And that's going to turn into summer. And then summertime, we're going to pick berries and go on the land and enjoy the land. The land is very beautiful. And it don't matter if it's raining or sun shining. The land is beautiful, as we are, as you are. And I'm glad you got here safe and sound, and that you return home to your home safe and sound. Thank you very much, my friends and relatives. Limlimt. Thank you. Have a good day. Wait.
So hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining us this evening. My name is Victoria Burge. I'm the Education Coordinator of Adult Programming here at the Kelowna Art Gallery. And on behalf of the Board of Directors and staff, I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us. I'll begin this evening's talk, of course, by acknowledging that the land on which the gallery stands is the unceded traditional territory of the Okanagan Silks people. We're very grateful to be where we are today. Now tonight we are heading into our third lecture in our lecture series, all to do with BOMBHEAD. The BOMBHEAD exhibition is on display here at our gallery until July 18th. BOMBHEAD is a touring exhibition that's organized and circulated by the Vancouver Art Gallery and is presented here at the Kelowna Art Gallery with the support of our sponsor, IG Wealth Management. Now tonight's lecture is a little bit different. As you can see, I've got two artists joining me this evening. We've got Erin Siddall and Demma Igharas, and their talk tonight is titled Great Bear Money Rock. Their collaborative work explores the actual and metaphysical landscapes of the North, Canada's nuclear histories, resulting radioactive and environmental hazards, and the potential for future traumatic events consumed by corporatized resource extraction. I'll go into a quick bio for each of our speakers here tonight, and then I will hand it over to them. So Demma Igharas is an interdisciplinary artist and a member of the Tahltan Nation. She has a bachelor's degree from Carr University of Art and Design and graduated from the Interdisciplinary Masters in Art, Media and Design program at OCADu. She won the 2018 Emily Award for Outstanding Carr University Alumni. She was longlisted for the 2020 Sobey Art Award and has performed in various places across Canada and internationally in Sweden, Mexico, the US, and Chile. And Erin Siddall, whose artwork is actually featured in BOMBHEAD. So if you are in Kelowna, you can come and check it out right here on site. She is a Vancouver-based artist who holds an MFA from the University of British Columbia and a BA from Carr University of Art and Design. She has screened and shown in solo, public, and group contexts at galleries and festivals such as the Vancouver Art Gallery, Gallery 44, Burrard Arts, Foundation Studio, Nuit Blanche in Saskatchewan, and is a co-recipient of a Canada Council Research and Creation Award. Quickly before I hand it over, just a few little housekeeping rules. We will have an hour-long talk this evening. It'll bring us to 7, and we will have a little bit of time near the end for your questions. So as most of you know, you can type those into the chat bar at the bottom there, and I will try my best to get as many answered as possible in the time we have tonight. I must also let you all know that this is being recorded for future viewing. So if you know anybody who would love to check it out, you'll be able to find it up on the Kelowna Art Gallery's website at a later date. So that's all for me. I'll stop talking now and I'll hand it over to you guys. Please take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we're just really, really happy to be invited to speak to all of you today. I see some familiar names in the participants list, which is really exciting. I'm glad to have you join, and I know a lot of people are pretty zoomed out, so that means a lot. Both Erin and I are zooming in from the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish territories in Vancouver. In particular, I'm on Musqueam territory near UBC, and I just want to honor those people for being custodians of this land in which we are zooming in from. So we're going to do a bit of an introduction of our separate practices, and then kind of come together a little bit on our collaboration. So I'll just hand it over to Erin to share my screen here. We've got some pictures to show you.
Hi. So it's I'm starting because the show BOMBHEAD is my work is in the show BOMBHEAD, and incidentally, that one of the evenings, public evenings for BOMBHEAD, is when Sam and I connected in person about the seed of working on this next piece together. So 10 years ago, yesterday, as so Facebook told me, I headed off to Japan just after the nuclear disaster in Fukushima. I was already planning to go with my daughter, as I used to live there for quite a long time. And I was really compelled to make a film while I was there in the exclusion. It's not, what was it called? It was called the Niju Kenai. So it's a 20-kilometer no entry zone. So it was an exclusion zone. There was a very firm exclusion zone, and there was a secondary exclusion zone around the disaster. And I was really curious about this sort of flexible space that could have been either safe or unsafe, or clean or unclean. And I was really just curious about it. And so the film Fukushima Half-Life was the result of that, which I finished in 2013 and began to exhibit most notably at in BOMBHEAD. Would you mind the next slide, Demma? Oh, that one. Yeah, so here's another still from the film. I spent 5 days in Fukushima looking through and observing the area, really just being in the space of this is flexible and possibly dangerous area. I had a Geiger counter, and readings were not always in the high zone, but sometimes they would lead into that. Could you go to the next slide? After making this film, I started thinking about other nuclear histories and began to look at where the nuclear bomb came from and where it was most and where it was tested in Nevada. I found myself going there several times and discovered that there was these other borders around this space that you couldn't enter. And just outside of the nuclear test site in Nevada, there was a peace camp, which was inhabited for from the 1940s into the 1990s without anyone leaving. And then when the Berlin Wall came down and the Cold War ended, people stopped being there. Yet the threat, the nuclear threat, both from supposed clean energies like in Fukushima, and also the more nefarious uses within weaponry, continued to go on. And so in the site of the former peace camp, I could see the vestiges of inhabitation. And so I began to work with these stone circles and delineations of paths. If you could move to the next slide, that would be great. Thanks so much, Demma. And I also began to work with this glass. I was looking for glass made by nuclear explosions, which is a little silly. But it turns out that there is actually glass that could be made through meteorites hitting the Earth or through nuclear explosions in other areas of the US and elsewhere. And I became really enamored with this Depression era glass, which has been colored with uranium oxide. And again, it's like this very beautiful thing, which also relates to domesticity and also the missing people or the absent people who were once there. And so I spent some time photographing this area and developing that project for a few more years, through to around the same time of the BOMBHEAD show, the original BOMBHEAD show in 2018, which was a very peak time for nuclear risk in the world. But now we include climate change in the nuclear or the doomsday clock. And so at any rate, I began really thinking about the Earth itself and the extraction of these materials and why we do this and why we might not do this, and stumbled across Canadian history in connection to uranium mining and the atomic era happening in Great Bear Lake. And what I discovered was a really rich history, which isn't really painful and not easy to tell and difficult to engage, but it felt really important to me since I had spent many years working through this theme, to connect to, and something also that I didn't want to do on my own. And as I began discussing this in studio visits with other artists and curators, a few people had mentioned Tsēmā to me and her practice, and then we bumped into each other at BOMBHEAD events and began developing the next leg of the project together. I also want to say that we went to our undergraduate together, and so we did already know each other, and it was a nice reunion for this. If you don't mind moving ahead just a little bit. This is some more work that I did with the glass in Toronto and working with the glass shards. Oh, okay, and I think Tsēmā might be ready to talk a little bit about her practice. Thanks for letting me go first.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, Demma Igharas. My name is Demma, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I'm really focused on a couple of different research streams. For the most part, I make artwork that is about mining. It's connecting the materials that could have been mined from Indigenous territories to the territories that they may have come from, and then also bodies, not just Indigenous bodies, to those lands through consumption. And some of my other work is in decolonial design practices. So I work a lot with youth and working on a research project that imagines a different way of a different future, a different way of learning through a indigenous lens. So how I got into mining is during my undergrad, I was working as a mining or as a environmental scientist field assistant for doing baseline studies in some of the many mines that were operating in Tahltan territory, continue to operate in Tahltan territory. And so I really have this this push-pull relationship with industry since I have, you know, since I recognized mining to be a colonial corporate industry, and at the same time really sees some of the benefits or some of the relationships that people have established with with this industry, and also that my ancestors mined for obsidian and copper since time immemorial. So I have this kind of this little sweet spot where I try to make the art like in between those spaces where I think that art can speak where words are lacking. I mean, another reason that I came to this way of speaking about art is because at the same time as I was helping Mines Open in doing these environmental baseline studies to be able to get the environmental permits, I was also protesting mine sites that were going into sacred territories or territories we really didn't, as a, you know, a Tahltan United force would be against. For instance, yeah, the Sacred Headwaters Project and anthracite coal, methane gas fracking in headwaters in Tahltan territory. So this is a picture of some of the work that I was doing at the time, environmental work. And you know, what I really come down to is, especially working on this concept in Toronto, was how to speak about these issues in a way that really connected multiple bodies from different territories to back to the issues of mining. And so the way that I was really communicating this was through first, this work actually really helped to communicate that. This work is called What Is Left, but then also works following. So revealing the material essence of an object, of an everyday object, like this money or our phones, back to the systems that created them. So back to the mine sites, back to the systems of production, and then also to the repercussions of our thirst for natural resources. So in this work, What Is Left, I'm deconstructing, or I'm trying to deprocess an object so you can see the copper within. But also copper is not only like an important in the mining industry right now. It really drives this economy. Many of the mines that I worked in were going to be copper mines, and you know, this now defunct 1 cent coin is a result of that worth of that mineral. But what I really like to do in the work is kind of challenge that measure of worth, or challenge what has value, and so then from this point on, showing different ways to value these materials, and then the land that was mined to produce them. And so this is from a recent body of work called Black Gold, which was showing at the Grunt Gallery recently, where I started to take some of these ideas into other territories. So also thinking about how through consumption, through touch or use of an everyday object, in this case, different kinds of materials that could be derived from bitumen, how then we could be connected to those territories of extraction. And this is also the kind of thinking that I used when working with Erin and visiting the Northwest Territories, and use this project or this kind of research as a model and how to work together to visit other territories that were not my own. So in this work here, I traveled with a couple of collaborators as well to access that space, and kind of come up with a little bit of a different, like a really similar concept as what happened with our work with uranium, is that that we challenged, what really is of value. So this is a protest flag of the water protesting, and a monument, this flagpole made of my arm in a protest kind of a stance, which was new work that I made for Vancouver. And finally, just thinking about also the history that my ancestors have had with mining, and challenging the system that extracts today, of how we can consume better, how we can live better, and then trying to teach that to the next generation. And this is where we came together.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. Thank you so much, Demma. It was really great to hear you talk about your recent work. We've been in and out of meetings for many months with our new project, and I just hadn't actually heard you explain it yet, although I had seen some of the silt samples, and so it was really great to hear. I right after I had some time to write the grant in 2018, and we received it. Did we receive it? Yeah, we received it in 2018, but we ran out of time to use it that summer to visit Northwest Territories. And I had already been in communication with the one community where they could bring us, and where they would also hold us in their history if they could be vulnerable to that story, with that story as well. For several years, both logistically and also relationship building. And there was a very brief period of time in the north, on Great Bear Lake, which is northwest of Yellowknife in Northwest Territories. On the map, about an hour and a bit by plane. There isn't a road unless you go for a few months in the winter. There's a nice road that takes goods, not usually people, but goods. And so you have to wait until quite late in July for the ice to have melted sufficiently. It's a very big lake. And the mine site that we wanted to visit was in good weather, 10 to 12 hours across the lake along the other side. And we knew it was really important for us both to really take our time to engage with entering into this history and territory, and also to take our time in the community, and to go through and with the community before arriving at the mine. And so anyway, long story short, I talked Demma into a really long bit of a nutty adventure where I drove from Vancouver to Yellowknife, picked her up in her territory while she was completing a project, and spent time there. And then we came by land, and I think that was really important for me, to travel from where I was born to this site in order to investigate it as not as slowly as possible, but in a more measured way than flying up just as quickly as possible to the Northwest Territories. And we saw a lot of beautiful things along the way, and we were able to chew on some of the tougher questions, including one that you touched on already, which is being a visitor to Delaney, which is the picture that you're looking at right now. And so I'll pass it over to you, and I'll let you share a bit about the early stages.
Yeah, so like Erin was saying, it was really important for us to travel there. I mean, I had traveled as far as around Dease Lake area and Telegraph Creek, and Erin came to pick me up in Telegraph Creek after quite a large hike that I had completed for land-based education. And we then drove further north, and I have to admit, I always say that I'm from the north, and I'm this northern Indigenous person, but I couldn't say that after we traveled, continued to travel north and met some some Dene friends and our guides, and they, I really got made fun of for being a Southerner, which I was not used to. But it's true, we at one point we were at the Arctic Circle, and the season is so short, like Erin was saying, and so there's this kind of time budget that we had to work within. And as I was saying, with the work in the oil sands, it's really important for me as an artist to go to the site of industry and be able to respond in that way. And it's also really important for me to be guided by local First Nations or Indigenous folks. And so that's something that both Erin and I agreed on. Since there is another way to get to Port Radium, if we wanted to, we can hire a helicopter and we can go directly there, but that was not what we had intended. So we really wanted to have build a bit of a relationship with the folks who are most affected by this site.
I think I'll jump in here and I'll just give a really brief history for those of you that, this is really a nutshell, but something that is not very well known. When I was researching for my other projects in Japan and in Nevada and the atomic histories in general, I came across information about Canada's role in the Manhattan Project, which was the secret government project to build the first nuclear bomb in the US during the 1940s, which subsequently ended the war. So uranium was very hard to source at that time. Uranium mines in Europe were being, not in Europe, in Africa and through Europe were being postured over. And so it was decided that all of the uranium would be sourced for this project, for the Manhattan Project, would be sourced from a Canadian uranium mine, this mine, Port Radium, in Northwest Territories. So prior to that, it had been a private company, Cameco, which still continues to be a private company. And they had mined radium from that site and other minerals from the early 1910s. And they had been used as colorant in glass, like the glass that I showed, and also for cancer treatment and other industrial purposes, radium. And when the Canadian government became involved during the Manhattan Project, they took it over as a Crown Corporation for a number of years. And it was during that time that they also commissioned the Satu Dene people of both the city of Port Radium, because they had, there were people who were living there who had come from Delaunay and other places, but mostly people who were Great Bear Lake, Satu means Great Bear Lake, Dene descendants. And the town itself of Port Radium was, and the mine site was there until it was taken down and covered over. So all of the uranium that was used in the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan came from that one site. And furthermore, it's fairly well documented. We had a lot of details shared with us, but it's very easy for one to find, extra personal details, but it's very easy for one to find the history of the Canadian government having commissioned Dene workers to carry the sacks of yellow cake onto boats or onto planes at bases nearby to either be shipped down the Mackenzie River to Port Hope, Ontario, where they would be refined into uranium. The refinement didn't happen on Great Bear Lake. It happened in Ontario, in Port Hope, Ontario. So there's and of course the Dene were not warned that it was dangerous, and there were a lot of deaths, and there's a lot of suffering as a result of the non-disclosure of that. When we arrived in the town, we very quickly discovered that our hopeful plans for journeying across the lake would be absolutely up to one person everyone called the boss, which was the lake, and the weather. Great Bear Lake is the boss. So we waited, and we thought we may actually not be able to go. And in the end, we had a very short window, and we were able to go. Maybe if you show the next slide, you could talk a little bit about. Oh, sorry, I think there was one before that that was pictures. Yeah, these ones. Oh, sorry, that was already up. Thanks. So yeah, Demma maybe would like to speak a little bit about our preparations for the week that we were waiting for the weather to shift.
I mean, it was yeah, it was a lot of waiting in the band office and trying to organize our guides, but yeah, I think it was also an important time to get ourselves ready spiritually. I think for the journey, it ended up being really impactful. I actually kind of want to jump in a little bit.
Yeah, do it. Go ahead. I wanted to just let you lead from there. I wanted to give the history bit. That's all. The shareable.
Because it was just so slow, and then we had to leave, and we had to leave like the day that it was sunny, and the morning of, you know, and we had prepared so much food, but our guides went over and above. We could have survived there for a week or two. And they were just really, really happy to host us, which was, you know, we were thrilled about as well. So it took us 10 hours to get across the lake, and that was on a good day. And then we were camped one night at Port Radium, and the next morning we had visited the mine. And yeah, the mine site, I would have to say, was probably the cleanest mine site I've ever visited personally. It was, you know, there was like a couple of little moments of infrastructure. There was also these parts, you know, like little pieces and evidence that there was a mine there, including a monument, a government sign, and some of these kinds of footings. We'd found, but not obvious. We'd found like some broken cups, you know, a couple of nails, but for the most part, a very clean mine site, which you can see in this this photo too, where like the natural wall meets the backfill that was used to kind of cover up the shafts and the mine site. Erin, did you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I can wait though. But back to those two photos of the lake on our way there. We filmed. We took photographs as well as filming 16mm film along the way, and it was just like this unending sea. It felt like a sea, and there wasn't a lot of landscape. Even the mountain that we were shown was quite a small, shape on the landscape. And as we arrived at the mine, I had a very similar experience. We stood at the monument and read it, and it was shared with us where the errors were or the omissions were in the explanation of what had occurred and the mine site and associated deaths and so on. And so as we walked over the site, the former mine site, it was like this mimicking of this unending rolling water that we had come on. It was like they'd taken all of the insides of the mine and crushed rock. I mean, it had been pulled out and probably dumped in one spot, but they took it and they used that material to cover over all evidence of habitation and use of the land. It was very uncanny.
And you know, we really thought that we kind of had a plan for performance, and also Erin had brought a budget of film, and so we had done some hiking around the site. Erin was filming, and then I had planned this performance with this uranium glass to, you know, return a little bit of the glass to the land, or conduct some sort of ceremony that didn't necessarily have to be a you know, filmed or not. But also the lake said no, and when we really pushed it, our guides continued to tell us that we needed to go, and we, you know, we really took liberties, which we should not have, because what ended up happening is a strip of water that took us 10 minutes, took us 2 hours, and both Erin and I really felt like we were in danger of flipping over, of yeah, not exactly sure. No, we connected after. Both Erin and I were like, we thought we were close to death. And you know, we had this moment where we stopped and tried to wait it out a little bit, and then kept on going. But we were riding the biggest waves I've been on personally. You know, not a lot of experience on the water. I'm more of a mountain person personally, and very outside of my element. Our guides were so incredible and also experienced, and we ended up stopping for the night and missing our flight the next day. So this is a little moment of, it's sunshine, but it's a massive storm.
I'm sensitive about how much of our guides' experience to share, but I'll share two things that I think really speak to the situation. When we arrived at the mine site, you know, it was very, I don't think that they had visited very often because it's so far, and because of, you know, many heavy reasons. And their sense was, and it was beautiful, cloudless sky, and their sense was they, you know, a little uncomfortable, and they shared that with us. And we said, okay, we'll be done really soon. You know, as she said, we were, you know, we had a few hundred feet of film left to shoot, and a possible performance. And then there was a moment where all of us just kind of got it, like, we have to get on the boat right now. And we did. And something about the site itself, you know, there was, of course, when you visit somewhere, and I had an experience like this, where when you visit somewhere like Fukushima or a former uranium mine, we had a guidance counter, so we could measure, you know, where some danger was not. But there's this sense of real, you know, possibly, and we've spoken about this since, Sam, and I hope it's okay for me to share this. Like I think I have learned about myself that I have possibly, or just maybe it's part of being in the modern age, lived a little bit disembodied some of my life. And when you're in a place where there is this sort of like underlying invisible danger, or you feel more present. And then, of course, when we were in the boat after, and I thought we were going to die in the boat. We were quite silent for those 2 hours until we found shelter and passed through the storm. This photograph is through the rain, so tarp on the boat. The windshield wiper also stopped working on the boat. It was terrifying. And not being at the site together, and then experiencing this, and then, you know, really kind of being in our own experiences, writing about it, but coming back to talk about it last year, almost, you know, 7 months after our journey in early COVID, we made this relationship between that fear bringing you into your body, and having only ever really experienced that on this trip, like, and for me also a few other times, like having visited Fukushima, and then re-experiencing that during COVID, this in another sort of
invisible danger.
collective invisible danger, which we continue to live through that era. And so, yeah, we drew parallels between the land, the bodies, these experiences. Yeah.
And it brings us to kind of our response, which we kind of continue the story through the art. So we had been asked by Momenta Biennale in Montreal to put together a body of work, and then also the Toronto Biennale in partnership to respond to our research, respond to this trip, this very meaningful trip that Erin and I went on a couple of years ago. So we've been developing over the last little while here this and really trying to kind of simmer out some main themes. And for us, it really it actually really came to this very important resource. So like I was saying with the realizations with Black Gold, and then also my work in the past as well, the impacts in mining has on water, and then water being the predicted to be the next big resource coming from Canada, the next most important stock trade, and thinking also what the water meant and how the water is so sacred, that Satu, or Great Bear Lake, is to Dene people, and their entire livelihood built around this lake and this body of water, and the kinds of ways that they absolutely respected this site of extraction, and the kinds of dangers that were present, and the ways that this kind of this kind of result was predicted. And in another way, through their through their spiritual teachings, just knowing that the real resource and the real value in the lake is the water that is contained in the lake. And pardon me. And so we really tried to listen to our teachings and respond in a way that wasn't so much about the fantasies of this kind of dystopia that was the port, the mine, or even the storm, but rather, thinking about our time after the storm, when we woke up to a lake that was like glass, and on our way back took some time to do some fishing, and then there was a bit of a fishing derby at the time, and then a community member got a moose, and then people from all around in boats were radioing and kind of met us on the beach, and then went over to process that moose. I mean, this was just, it's like the magic moment, and our guides just said, this is what we wanted you to see, not the the horrors of this mine, but the the beauty of the water, and the kind of sustenance that the water had brought their culture and their nation. So what we decided to do is, with this water that we collected from Great Bear Lake near the mine site, we wanted to feature this as the main character in the work that we were producing. So we have it atop a Prism plinth, and we're going to be projecting some of our video footage through this prism and through this water. And so it's going to be making multiple images, and it'll heavily distort what gets projected onto the feature wall. We're really thinking about these different cosmologies in play, and also different perspectives, thinking of a way to capture a journey, but also make it relevant to a viewer, to be able to put their own story within within this this journey, and then also within this complicated issue. Is there anything else you want to add there, Erin?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. We talked a lot about why and what different ways that Prism can be read. We have actually found a giant prism, which is great because it was in our imagination, and now one is being made as we speak. And so this 16 millimeter footage that I collected, or we collected during this trip, we will be projecting it through the Prism. And I love that there's so many different well, first of all, it's a refractive prism, so it will split up the different wavelengths of light, and so it will look beautiful, but it also is doing something that relates to nuclear physics or physics, and also water and light spectrums, and referencing, for me, like some of these analogies of what is seen and not seen, and also like this, the rainbow having the rainbow or a splitting of a spectrum having so many different ways in for different people, including something in Tsēmā's language, and also many other cosmologies. I really wasn't. Sorry, let me rewind that. I really was excited to work with the bottle as this collected object, because there's something about it holding not only the environmental destruction to the lake in that one area where many, I mean, they cleaned it up. It was a big cleanup, but there's still, millions of pounds or tons of tailings from uranium and silver mining that were dumped into the lake. And so where we docked was one of the more radioactive spots, kind of just instantly when we were taking readings. And so the water there would not be very clean. But yeah, it would also hold other memory too. Before that time, water having a crystalline structure, and this idea important to the Satudene that the lake itself holds memory. Yeah, so I think I might have repeated some of what you said, and then we did find some really beautiful rocks and crystals. Actually, I didn't find very many of them. Demma found most of them while we were walking around, and our guides, they were really, they said you should have these. Would you like to have these? And so we brought a small collection of these rocks from the mine site with us, and they are radioactive. Actually, there's one of them that's very radioactive, not in that picture. That one's been put away so that it cannot harm anyone. But they're not so dangerous that one couldn't be around them a little bit, but they do need to. There's the intention that we have that we would protect you from that. And we thought about, as we were discussing how we could take these rocks and how we could use them in an installation safely, we began to think about ways to enclose them. And leaded glass, or lead glass with lead, would provide some protection. So I'll let you explain a little bit more about that, Tsēmā.
Mm-hmm. So what we've done is in two different installations right now for Montreal is we've got one with the projection, and then this other one here that's focusing a little bit more on the land, and we have these bubbles that are not only protecting the viewer, but they're also protecting these rocks. And so there's this kind of play there. We've commissioned a glass blower at a local glass shop here to blow these these shapes that mimic the rocks in a container, so in a clear container. for these rocks on the floor. We'll be putting them on the floor, which is kind of this interesting, also this play on this kind of fragility of the land, and also this way that you really have to perform when you're in the space, to walk around, to be careful, to really revere the sculptures, and also the idea that's contained within them. Here's our massively radioactive rock that scared us both. It was really my fault. We were just about to do this performance near the tailings pond, and I went, wow, what a gift. I see this rock with natural copper in it. This is such a gift, thank you. and grabbed it from the tailings pond and stuck it into the boat. And like Erin said, we had permission to be able to take these rocks, which made me feel, like we were a bit conflicted, but the rocks were, there's a lot of mineral activity, let's say, still at this mine site. A lot of crystals, a lot of sparkles, and so we did give in there, but not without consequence, as you can see. Some other parts of the installation we're going to be doing is displaying some of the photographs. So we have a couple of different plinths that we've been building. One that will be in the same shape as this government warning sign, and the other in the monument. And so we're just really playing with this idea that in this picture of a footing, and the kind of ways that the government really influenced the site, and then also controlled the kind of narrative, as well as the cover-up job. So the picture that's in the background of Erin's Zoom there, so that's going to be printed out and then put on a shape that's really similar to this monument that's placed at the mine site. So just speaking about this idea of a cover up, and the land being kind of used against or in how the land was being used there. And
Yeah.
we're really close to our time, so
perfect. Yeah, maybe we should maybe come back in and open it up to questions. Just maybe as she's doing that, I'll mention that the photographs will be printed on silk, so they have this kind of diaphanous, water-like materiality to them, which we both really have enjoyed the idea of, although we have not seen that piece of the installation yet. It's still in progress. So thank you for letting us share it.
Thank you so much. Wow, I learned so much about your journey. I can't imagine being in a boat for 10 hours on a lake. Oh my goodness. I'm from Newfoundland, and the ferry to get across the ocean only takes 8 to 10 hours. So I can only imagine the scale of this lake. It must be gigantic. So well done. Very important research that came to fruition, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to see this work someday. So we'll open it up for questions, and if anybody has any, please feel free to type them into the chat bar. Now is your time. We just have a few minutes left, so try to get to as many as I can. I'm just curious when rough dates of when this work will be on display.
The Momenta in Montreal opens, I believe it's September 8th, and I think it runs for 2 months.
Oh.
And it's in 2 different galleries. Forgive me, I'm not sure I can pronounce one of them. I think it's Luquam, and the other one is Bach. It's a festival, so they have 50 artists participating, and the name of the exhibition is Sensing Nature. So really, really very good fit for our project. And then the Toronto Biennale, I believe it's in the spring of 2022. So I think they're, kind of COVID era, keeping things a little bit loose at this point. But yeah, that they haven't given us firm dates.
That's amazing. Yeah. Hopefully in 2022, you guys can actually physically go and be there for the Biennale and enjoy your time to see your work in person. Well, I do have a question coming in here from Michael Love, who will actually be doing his own lecture series, or his own lecture as a part of the series coming up. He says, Erin, do you see a parallel between the water you've collected at Bear Lake and the water being released at the Fukushima plant?
That's a really nice question, Michael. I had not given that a lot of thought, but there is such a deep relationship between that. The Great Bear Lake is like this container in this very far away imaginary space, and so it's very easy for that cleanup job that happened, I believe, in 2004 of the mine site, and I can't remember the year that they did the big cleanup at Port Hope, Ontario, which is the largest industrial uranium cleanup that's ever been done. Yes, and then in Japan, they have been kind of withholding these tailings, these very dangerous tailings from the meltdown of the rods in 10 years ago in 2011. And then the decision being to release them into the Pacific is really a bit more, feels a bit closer to us, even though it isn't in some ways, because we share the opposite coast. So yeah, that's something, yeah, that's a really interesting circle for my work to have taken. Thank you for that question. I think that those combinations of circles between the relationships between, for example, the fallout from one place landing over into another place, or the water from one place going into another place, how we think things are happening in isolated areas, but there's always these kind of concentric circles of impact that happen. But that's a wonderful question. I'd love to have a whole other discussion about that. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Wonderful question. I've got another one here from Susan. She says, thank you for sharing your research, art, and such a wild journey. You had to plan so carefully. A couple of questions. What was one of the most surprising experiences or realizations you found that you did not expect? And second question, how long were you actually at the mine site for?
We weren't at the mine site for long. We really were there like a morning and a little bit into the afternoon. Maybe we left around, yeah, it was, yeah, hot second. It was very, yeah, it was shorter than we thought. I think it was longer than 3 hours though. I felt like we went although we did have like a massive, amazing breakfast, and meandered over there because it really was really beautiful weather when we first started, and then the clouds come in and the storm started to brew and the wind started to come up. So we left after lunch. And for me, the most surprising part about it was, I think, the similarities in culture. So we were really really sharing about our kinds of ideologies and similar words in Tahltan language as in the Dene language, which are both Athabascan roots. So I'm not exactly sure why I thought that would be such a surprise. Also, how fluent the folks in Dene are in their language. I was so impressed. as it's a first language. And I think it was the spiritual side of the journey was really the thing that impacted me the most. How that was shared with us, which was a real honor. Some of the prophecies that elders had made about this site, and then what's to come, and the kind of lifestyle and culture built around the lake. I think that would be my biggest takeaways. How about you, Erin?
Oh, there were a lot of surprises. I think just I think that the overall biggest surprise for me at first was the experience of being really the only like humans in a very wide empty landscape. And I've traveled really extensively in the past, but I had never experienced anything like that before, and it was really incredible. I just felt so mindful of my connection to being on the land, and in such gratitude to the guides and their deep knowledge of the lake and the wildlife, and I think that I can't think of anything greater than that. There were many other very surprising things at the site itself, at the mine. The covering over with the rocks was really surprising to me. That it was like a kind of awe, like, wow, it's really an erasure. And yeah, that's it. The site itself, so maybe I'll clarify in case you're interested in knowing, we camped the night before in a bay nearby the mine site, which had been part of the town. And so that had all been taken down too. And then a fishing lodge kind of lease agreement had been made with the Sachedene, and there was a lodge that had been built for, I think, an Alberta company, which had subsequently partially burned down. And then there were also some other vestiges or remains from the town that had not been removed, like the building. So that was really interesting. We were shown some very sacred places, and so yes, I was also honored to have been, at the end of the trip, to really have felt like I was wholeheartedly invited to come back and to share in their sort of next important community event happening after. Well, we both had something big on our agenda really soon after, that I really wish I could have stayed longer and spent more time sort of integrating that experience and cementing those relationships at that time.
Wonderful. Yeah, a very unexpected journey for sure. There are a few more questions here, but we are near the end of our time. I know that you guys can also see these questions. Is there one in particular you would like me to read out, and then maybe we could close from there?
I would love to answer Ray Kurzweil's question, just because it kind of circles back to the show. And then I'll just answer quickly, and then maybe some of you could read through if there's one that you want to answer. I learned that we can prevent the use of uranium and plutonium for so what have I learned that we can use to prevent the type of use for uranium and plutonium that was used in World War II? So that's a really interesting question. I think that there isn't really a safe way to use those materials. They're like a discovery that we made, and this is a broader, philosophical question that I think about. Not only me, but I concern myself with is what do we do with, can we as a collective, responsibly use, a material for far in industry, like uranium and plutonium, in responsible and safe ways. And so far, I don't believe so, because it is still used in at least it has been used for geopolitical posturing and power struggles. And we haven't been very good at disarmament. In fact, we've going through a period of escalation, not the same as in the Cold War, post World War II era, but multiple other countries being involved in uranium enrichment, and so I personally don't believe we have an answer to that, other than maybe a moratorium on taking it out of the earth and using it for those purposes. Let's find clean energy. Tsēmā, do you, absolutely clean in terms of politics too. Demma, do you have a question you'd like to answer?
Sure, I might as well tackle the one where Roger's asking somewhat directly if I can speak around the dilemma around mining affecting the work. I mean, I think that that's really what drives me to this project, or like makes me invested into the project. I mean, really, I think something that I was having a hard time with was relating to the issues of the atomic histories that Erin is so knowledgeable about. Growing up in a different, I mean, not that she grew up in that age, but growing up in a different age of our parents, who were really affected by the threat of a nuclear war. I'm not saying that we aren't, but even to the fact of having these drills like we do, earthquakes. And so this was kind of my, or I was even thinking about, yes, we were affected by Fukushima, but it was so far away, or even Chernobyl. So thinking about these kinds of radioactive disasters, or thinking about these nuclear bombs in Japan. But what hooked me into this project is the connection through the material. So the physical material being used to make the bomb that really does implicate the citizens of this country, since we continue to support the government that allowed this to happen. And I'd also really like to question in my work the kinds of regulations that that exist to do with mining, and the way that we don't necessarily have to put this kind of effort into a cleanup job in most other mine sites. And so just really highlighting this kind of a cleanup job or cover up job in this particular mine, because it really was a bad situation and continues to be a liability for the government. I think, yeah, maybe I'll kind of leave it there, just to say that the work continues to intrigue me. I'm continually inspired to make an effort to show this this shared history, even if we do think of these kinds of mine sites, these kinds of issues to be outside of our own bodies, outside of our own sphere. I continue to kind of be thrilled by the dilemma, I guess, and then just really want to speak to it through artistic means. And so, yeah, I just want to acknowledge Erin's amazing collaboration and patience as we sort through these really complicated issues together, and really present this work. I'm just really happy to work with her.
Yeah, me too. This is a nice little piece of video. Hopefully you can all see it. This is the beginning of our trip. And I'll just quickly answer Roger's question too about how this epiphany about disembodiment, or rather re-embodiment maybe, or embodiment, has impacted my work. I feel like I can't make any work with any kind of materials anymore. From, like, you know, there's a way, especially with using a camera, or using maybe less so with 16mm, because you're using your hands to load it, and there's a real tactility to it, the sound and the weight of the cameras. you know, you can't just kind of, it's not just like a very easy thing to do. But I don't think I can really make work without engaging the material sort of through the sense in my body now. Anyway, and I think that's impacted my overall art practice now. And you know, maybe it's also part of the experience of having lived through this, and then coming into the COVID era to sort of finish this work. And you know, all of these varied experiences of feeling present through you know, emotional connection to my body. Perhaps that wasn't super articulate, but I like that question. I wish we had time to answer all of them, and I'm so grateful also to work with you, Demma, and for a chance to share our work right now, and for everyone who came to be part of it tonight.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and I'm very grateful, of course, to our guides who were just shown in the video for keeping us safe and bringing us into these sites. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, catching a glimpse of that boat just now. Well, you're very brave, both of you. And yeah, thank you for going on this journey and the important work that you're both doing. And thank you for joining us here this evening. I really appreciate our time together, and I appreciate you sharing your work with all of us and getting the chance to get to know that a little bit better. Anything you guys would like to say in closing before I finish off our lecture tonight?
Just thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both so much. And again, if anybody would like to watch this at a later date, we'll definitely have it available for you guys. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's talk. Be sure to mark your calendars for the next speaker coming up in our lecture series, which is Lindsay Freeman, who will be speaking on Thursday, June 17th from 6 to 7 p.m. I hope to see you all then. Thank you all so much, and have a great night, everybody.